Hi, we're at micebook LUXE at the Fish Hotel and Retreat in the Cotswolds, and I'm here with Markus, who is our keynote speaker today. Obviously, your career has ranged a lot of luxury brands, Aston Martin, Virtu. You've seen firsthand how these iconic brands can sort of build status and desirability. What lessons can the luxury experiences and events sector learn from the luxury goods sector and other luxury sectors?
It's interesting because I do think that most is to be had from non-luxury sectors, actually. We'll talk a little bit about this shift as well, but one area is really deeply understanding who you work for, and this who has a why. Why do they do what they do? So instead of just delivering experiences and it's the nuts and bolts, right? Then you build a car, it's nuts and bolts and it has a price and so forth, is to go much deeper in understanding not just the client you're working with, but the clients of the clients and delivering experiences for those. And if I see, for instance, at Aston Martin, but Harley Davidson, we'll look at this specifically as well, how they do this over decades, or in Harley's case, over 100 years, is continuously shifting, and they're extremely clever in using connection to the market. But with Harley Davidson, if you look the culture that they've built, the following they've built, no one buys a Harley to go from A to B at all. It's a ticket into a world. And if we, and I guess you and in this industry as well, understand how this works, loyalty works, culture works, I think it's a huge enabler. And partly I think it's why this sector, even though luxury is declining as we speak, right? For the first time in nearly in 2 decades, the sector overall declines. But travel and experiences isn't. Travel and experiences, I wouldn't say booming, but it's definitely growing in a shrinking luxury market.
How can brands and sort of create luxury experiences that don't just impress, but really do connect?
Oh, that's a big question. That's a very big question. I mean, it probably goes back to status and what status is. And if we just hold the thought that status is no longer an ostentatious demonstration of wealth, it still is in parts of the world and in certain sectors, but specifically when you talk about culture as a competitive advantage, it's not about who has more. It's about how I feel working for you. It's about, and if you are a client who books an incentive trip, for example, understanding that dynamic is absolutely key. It's not just it's not just the beautiful place, the destination, the hotel, the experience, but it's maybe the personally handwritten card just for you, and it's for sure connecting the entire experience to the competitive advantage of culture for that specific client.
And I know you did a TED Talk a few years ago, and you talked a bit about fairy dust. I mean, one of our themes for this event is kind of giant footsteps, which is kind of like you talk about the nuts and bolts, and then that fairy touch, that kind of elevating events. You know, could you talk a little bit more about what you mean by fairy dust?
Human connection. I think it gets lost, unfortunately, a lot in our very accelerated world. And you just look OpenAI and Perplexity, and it's just accelerating. And so efficiency is sort of the new order. How can we make things more efficient? And of course, that's economically very beneficial. We can all benefit from it. Let's leave the downsides away. For businesses, whatever business you're in, it's a huge efficiency driver. And the risk is that we leave the human sparkle, the human connection a bit out of the context.
It's interesting because I was at an event recently and a luxury hotelier was talking about, he was talking about that human connection piece, but he was saying if we connect with our guests emotionally, they don't remember how much money they're spending, which I thought was quite interesting. It's like connecting on that emotional level, and then it's less about money, it's much more about that connection.
That's the holy grail. I mean, that's what distinguishes powerful brands from commodity, so to speak. It's very hard to price emotion, right? You have other brands, MasterCard, by the way, is a great example if you look at what they do with their priceless campaign. I mean, it's zeros and ones, it's transactions. But the way they amplify, I mean, if I buy an experience or invite my kid somewhere, or my wife, for example, and it's priceless. The time that you get, the quality you can buy with this is totally different from the rational transaction of what the company actually provides. But the margin they're able to extract from this, like Harley, like super luxury brands, is infinitely higher. So the margin is higher, the loyalty is better, both on the customer side and generally, and we'll talk about culture, on employees as well. So retention is generally higher too. So it pays off. It pays off to really think deeply, how do you emotionalize? And I think, to your question, it's the human spark, the human element, the right people in there that can make all the difference.
And lastly, I mean, you talked about obviously luxury shrinking slightly, but the experiences and travel side growing. Do you feel that that market will continue to grow?
Absolutely. I'm 100% convinced it already does. And if you look at the prediction of the next 3 years, travel and experiences are actually very, very, not booming, but they're growing solidly. And if you look, it's an interesting piece I've read in the FT earlier this year, is that travel has shifted. And when people say, why do you travel? And it's for business. It used to be meetings and going places. But if you look underneath of why people travel and why corporates bring people together, it's the competitive advantage of building strong cultures. Everything else becomes replaceable, is incredibly fast. I can copy your product, your service, but I cannot copy your corporate culture. And so what we see, what I see, and what I think we'll see more of is bringing people together to nurture that. And it's a strategic investment. And so one of the things I think for all participants is, don't think of yourself as a service provider that creates a beautiful experience. You are building competitive advantage for your clients. They're increasingly looking at this as a strategic investment and no longer just, well, can we save a bit on the hotel here? And it still happens, right? But I think that will play hugely to the advantage of this industry.